However, it could start at literally any moment starting from now.
Oh shit.
So keep that in mind.
I still need to fill in a few sources.
Nah, dude, you can do that later.
Isn't that the point? Like, to have it for the podcast?
Yeah, you can have it for the podcast, that's for sure, but you don't have to do it before. You could do it during, you can do it after, you can do it
Alright, fair
both
enough.
both ways. You can do it during and before, do during and after and before. That's up to you. Yeah, so I guess we're all here then for now.
I guess.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to change the title screen, that's for sure. We're already streaming, by the way. Hi! I'm gonna have to change this really quick. Super professional. Real fast here. In the meantime, present yourselves or the topic. Oh, jeez. This is a very long title. I'm gonna have to fix that. Hello?
Hello. I introduced myself.
Alright, cool. Salvo, what about you? You gotta present yourself. Well, or at least try. Oh, it should blend together if it actually was done correctly. Alright, so last stream and this new stream should just combine magically if we did everything correctly. Alright, so the topic this time around is one that I came up with because I couldn't think of anything better to do.
You're awfully fascinated with it.
Not really, it's just more of a factor of I thought it up and we can talk about it, and it's not really talked about very often. What?
Nothing.
We don't really, not many people talk about it. So the topic of this one is monogamy and, how the fuck do you pronounce it? Polygamy?
Pretty sure that's right.
All right, cool. Because I've never been 100% certain on that. Right. So we have a couple topics. Depending on how fast we go through them, we might just add another one as we see fit. But for now, let's start with the first one. What are your opinions? Hypothesis time. What are your opinions on the tendency for monogamy and polygamy within history? Like, what do you think is the tendency?
I guess the way I see it is, humans are naturally monogamous creatures simply because we are a case-selected species. We put a lot of time and effort into raising our young. We need to, teach them, we need to care for them. We can't just pop them out and let them go off into the wild. We can't really just mass reproduce and hope for the best. We need to put time and effort into raising children. Therefore, monogamy has always been the default, but depending on the circumstances, polygamy has occurred in certain cultures.
All right. What about you, Pete?
Basically the same. Practically speaking, for reproduction purposes, monogamy is kind of the one that makes more sense, but it's happened. There seems to be some attraction towards polygamy. Polygamy. Yeah.
All right. I kind of agree, but at the same time, I'm a little bit wary about it because it's a little hard to do the justifications on a scientific basis a lot of the time. But I understand your point. The way I see it is that humans, at the very least, throughout what I see as history, at least, like what I've seen in history, seems to be that we either don't have much of a choice except monogamy, or we prefer monogamy. But there does seem to be a large case for specific types of individuals, generally those on higher economic or political stratums, or just who are just plain lucky, that have a tendency to tend towards polygamous relationships for whatever reason. I don't know how common that is, but I would say that it is a very rare occurrence overall, except for like Salvo mentioned, some couple of cultures that do it, I guess.
Mind if I talk about that a little? And how it reflects nature?
It seems a little early for that, don't you think? Because the second topic is specifically... I guess so, but the second topic is specifically designed to cover that, so I guess that's up to you.
I'll wait then.
It's up to you. It's up to you. Oh, in the meantime, let me get a link just for people who might be interested in watching real quick. Just... Alright, continue.
Alright, this is an oversimplification, but according to the Emlyn and Oring model of mating in animals, generally there's the females are generally the sex-limiting factor. Reproduction is a major investment for them. Males are trying to monopolize on the sex-limiting factor. In nature, polygamy generally occurs when females are clustered together, allowing males to easily capitalize on them. Therefore, the way I see it, the reason certain people in power, like you said, people in positions of power, have the ability to be in polygamous relationships is because they possess power or resources or the ability to support such a relationship.
Huh. I'm trying to think about that a little bit. Interesting. It does seem to be the case that it is very difficult for someone to maintain a polygamous relationship, regardless of all previous facts should mentioned. Like, it's just very hard to raise a kid, right? So it makes sense that monogamy would tend to be the concept that is maintained more often. I'm just confused about why it's become such a hot topic of discourse in some places, like the Mormons. What's up with them? Like, what the hell happened there?
It's a major part of their doctrine. Let me go find some sources to fill that in.
Yeah, but why was it a part of their doctrines? Like, it's so strange that would be a specific doctrine that they'd hold, you know?
Honestly, my first thought about that is that Joseph Smith thought it sounded Bible-y to have multiple wives.
You know, that could be possible. Like maybe it's just a chance that it sounded holier to have multiple wives, like they did in the olden days, or whatever, or at least what he assumed it was like in the olden days, or whatever. That is kind of funny to consider. Let's see. Well, the thing is, I don't know whether it's because they think it's sustainable, whether it's because they like the idea, whether it's because I don't really understand why this became a thing.
I found a source for the prevalence of polygamy in today's Mormon offshoots and branches.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, it's no longer practiced in most mainstream branches of Mormonism.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
yeah, you'll get excommunicated for doing so, but there are still a number of very fundamentalist groups and sects that continue to practice polygamy, including certain offshoots that have relocated to Mexico or Canada.
That's one way of doing it.
The ones that still practice are currently under extreme pressure because it's usually associated with sex crimes such as rape.
Why? Why would it be associated with that exactly? They're two diametrically opposed concepts because one is usually, at least, I'm not sure how often there's non-consensual polygamous relationships, but
No,
usually.
Okay, so it's not associated. Well, it's
Because
not
it
like
sounds like it.
I should clarify it. I don't mean associated in the fact that they're directly linked, rather that certain sex scandals involving high-profile Mormon leaders have led it to be associated with rape in the public consciousness.
That's, I guess, interesting. Were there other cultures that perhaps tried to promote that sort of concept? I mean, I know there was like one case where they tried to make a thing where everyone was married with everyone else, tried to become the bonobos essentially. Become like bonobos, if you will.
What?
I don't remember exactly what it was, but I do recall there was like a town at some point that tried to do a fully polygamous everything.
And I heard there's a dude in India who has like a huge ass family of polygamy.
That's another factor. Yeah, it's not as common these days. But probably because it's just harder to raise that many kids, I guess, or to have that many wives in general. You know, like it's just really hard. It's very difficult.
Makes divorce messy, for one.
That too. Like it's just all right. I divorced with one. Okay, now what?
I've heard that may be the reason why it's illegal, but I can't confirm.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, what's the legality of it? Like, in terms of over time, like, was it just legal all the time before, or did it just become a thing recently that became illegal for it to be practiced commonly?
Okay, let's talk about that then. Okay, so the most famous Okay, so the first major Supreme Court trial involving polygamy occurred in 1876. Let me look at the date.
Excuse me, what?
Okay, so the Supreme Court case occurred in 1878. It was, to my knowledge, it's been illegal for a very long time, simply because America was built on Christian theology, frankly, stemming from the Puritans.
Oh, okay.
And well, yeah,
continue.
because of the case, it remains legal. You cannot use religious justification to commit a felony.
Okay. Yeah. You put up a thing there for that specifically.
If you scroll down, you'll find the majority opinion.
Yep, that's what I did. Don't worry. Yeah, it's hard to talk about this, like, in terms of what happened in historical times at least, because we don't have like.
Maybe we should have waited for Zach for this.
Well, section's not gonna come though.
Well, right, but I meant like the top.
Perhaps but I can't count on him arriving anymore, so I don't bother. Yeah, when it comes to history, we don't have the best understanding of that, unfortunately. So, I mean, yeah, I guess, what would you say would be the best way to conclude this topic? Because I don't think we can go much further with it as of now. I would imagine the best possible conclusion we could come to so far on the first topic is that it tends towards more monogamy.
Yeah, simply because of we're biologically predisposed to that.
We'll get to that in a moment. I just think it's because it's easier. Quite frankly, it's easier to do that too.
Yeah.
And the few people who could practice it needed a specific set of circumstances in order to actually maintain it in any significant way.
Humans just like exclusivity.
I don't know about that, but that's the thing. It doesn't... Alright, let's just go immediately to the next topic then, because we're touching on that way too much and we need to get it out of the way. Because I think this is where the meat of the topic is, really. Or at least some of the bigger parts of it. One. Second question things. So, hypothesis. What do you guys think about humans being predisposed towards one of the two practices over another? And do you think it's exclusive? Or do you think that it is more of a 90%, 10% kind of thing? I don't know. Depends on what your hypothesis is.
What do you mean exclusive?
What?
Never mind.
What do you think humans are predisposed to doing?
Monogamy.
Okay, you've explained it before, I think, but can you go into further detail at least a little bit? And only monogamy? Ever? That's the question. Like, predisposed towards any of them, and in what quantity?
So are you saying you're asking for percent, like...
I guess.
Between monogamy and...
It seems that a lot of people here have a difficult time grasping the concept of percentages, so just explain it however you think is the best way to explain it for you.
Well, again, children are a huge investment. So is having a spouse. Humans are generally gonna stay monogamous if they want to see their children live towards adulthood.
Okay, but is that necessary?
See, here's the thing.
Continue.
Even, like, if the natural response is to tend solely towards monogamy, then cheating wouldn't be a thing.
Depends on the kind of cheating, I guess. Okay, so that's Salvo's hypothesis. What about you, Pete?
I see, like, in the Bible, Solomon had a bunch of wives, and, like, the Greek gods basically just slept with whoever they want. So, based on what little I know about this stuff, it seems like polygamy is almost a reward.
So is that like a predispositional claim,
Maybe.
or non?
I'm not exactly sure, because it's never something that everyone is supposed to do. I don't really see that in a lot of places.
Interesting. Now,
Mind if I talk about that a little?
oh, dude, you haven't even let me talk yet. Technically,
Apologies.
remember hypotheses first, then we discuss. Yeah, it's a tough one for me because it's more of a. I believe humans are predisposed towards monogamy more often than not due to a factor of difficulty in raising the young and whatnot. However, due to our social tendencies as creatures of social capacity, we also have this thing called friends. And friends can also act as caretakers whenever we are in need of that sort of thing. And we have support groups in that same regard as well. And we've had that since as far as we can even describe humans being humans. So there's also the off chance that the idea of monogamy, due to that reason alone, isn't sufficient to maintain the idea afloat. And so the reasoning that I would give is, for the most part, we are monogamous, probably in large part because of the difficulty of raising children and the need to have some sort of protection nearby in some capacity. But I would imagine that because of our social tendencies as creatures that will form larger social groups, the tendency towards polygamy can increase in random quantities depending on the individual's preferences or whatever genetic predispositions they might have, which is probably going to be in the minorities. So I would estimate about a 5%, no, maybe a little higher. I would say maybe a 9% amount of people, I guess, would prefer to tend towards something more polygamous, at least when it comes to something more male-centric. And when it's more female-centric, because of the whole fact that they have to maintain their reproductive organs functional, and they have to take that into consideration whenever they choose a mate of any sort whatsoever, and the capacity for them to care for them and whatnot, I would say that the preference for polygamy in that case would be far lower, probably ranging around the 3% range. Just because of the fact that they can get pregnant and they have to wean the child, that is enough for me to think that the percentage of females who would prefer something like polygamy would be drastically reduced. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
All right, let's talk about it then, because I don't know if there was anything that I left unclear, because I was sort of spouting off my brain juices again, and spraying brain juice everywhere. Not sure if I was making any coherent sense. Hello?
Sorry.
Guys, we have to talk. Remember, this is a talking show. Was there anything that was left unclear?
I'm honestly stuck on... I'm just trying to think of something to say.
What did you think about the factors relating to social dynamics within the species affecting the chances for monogamy or polygamy to take hold? If no one's going to answer anything, we could just move on to the next question, you know?
Yo, is my mic not working?
I didn't hear you until just now.
I'm sorry, my Discord crashed for a moment and I had to come.
Wow, okay, so everyone died for just a moment there, or it could have been me, I'm not sure. Okay, back to the question then.
But yeah...
Back to my question then, to clarify then. Does the aspect of a social community in a species seem to indicate the possibility of an increase in polygamous tendencies within the species, or do you think that wouldn't be sufficient to increase it to any significant portion? Like it would still maintain within the fringes of what is considered human preference?
Well... based on a cursory, somewhat layman's glance of the animal kingdom, I would say, yeah. Social, tightly clustered groups are more... seem to contribute to polygamy. For example, lions.
Bonobos,
One-
gorillas.
Yeah.
Yeah, lions do that. I hadn't actually thought about that. And the reason it seems to be a lot more prominent with males as opposed to females, though, is pretty obvious, right?
Wait, also, I think do queens mate with multiple drones in a bee colony? I think that's effectively how.
Don't know, honestly, because the reproductive system works a little differently from mammals. Because in our case, at least, so far the cases that we've been seeing have been mostly the mammalian type, right? So when it comes to insects, it might be a very different situation on how the reproductive system works, meaning that their polygamous/monogamous tendencies would be different, right?
Yeah, but yeah, remember, I don't have a source on this, so I'm gonna say this. I think that bee queens do mate with multiple drones simply because it's good to have a range of options in case one of them dies, and it's
I guess that
very
makes sense.
advantageous to maintain
Genetic diversity.
Yeah, simply because they
Wait a
live so
minute.
close together, disease is a very big concern.
That is a good point. Pete, what were you gonna ask?
What would the other drones do if they're not the
What?
I'm pretty sure
it would
that
be like
the
a
drones
little
just
horror.
die after they mate.
Well, if they die after
And
they
they-
mate, then
and
they
that's it.
serve their purpose.
I thought they made
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
and then they all die at winter.
I was pretty sure each drone individually mates and then dies with the queen.
Drones have two reproductive functions. Each drone grows from the queen's unfertilized haploid egg and produces some 10 million male sperm cells, each genetically identical to the egg. Laying worker bee, blah blah blah. Okay, I'm gonna look into this in the meantime. You guys discuss this for a little bit.
Oh,
Oh boy, this is some complicated shit.
oh boy, dude. That's interesting because in the animal kingdom, a lot of animals.
Guys, please look at this shit. Please look at this. This is the way it works with bees.
Fascinating.
Oh god.
How do I know more about the reproductive systems of buggers from Ender's Game than bees?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like,
Do they bugger each other?
no, that's what they call making children. Buggering. Okay, main function is to be ready to fertilize a receptive queen. Drones in hive do not usually mate with a virgin queen of the same hive because the queen flies further, blah blah blah. Mating occurs in flight. Should it? They happen all the drones blood his body rushes. Oh shit, he does die.
Yeah, they're just fucking machines at the end of the day.
Yeah, the thing is, what they do is that if I were to put it in human terms, at least from what cursory understanding I managed to get from the Wikipedia article by looking at it for like 3 minutes, was that they do the do, and when they're done doing the do, they just die, leaving their penis behind. Essentially, like if I were to give like a humanoid mammalian analogy to work with it. Not a very fun life, but you know, you die doing what you love, I guess.
But what about the asexual bees?
I don't know if those exist. Also, wait, if they do exist, they're probably all the worker bees because they're all female and they don't bother reproducing with anybody. So there you go. There's your asexual bees, I guess. So yeah. Anywho, where were we about this? Like we were talking about the whole social aspect affecting it, right?
Yeah, lions.
Lions, right. Right, so I brought up the point that, at the very least when it comes to mammals, specifically mammals, it makes sense that in these social mammalian hierarchies that tend towards polygamy, it's never the female that has a harem, you know?
Unless it's like an insect.
Unless it's like, what?
Unless it's a bee.
Unless it's a bee. Yeah, bees are like the specific case where they're...
I thought mammals were already specified.
Yeah, I know. Bees are
I
not
thought you were
mammals.
saying mammals.
So, yeah. But that's the thing. When it's mammals, at least, it always seems to be males. Now, I think I know the answer to this, but what do you guys think is the reason for this being a trend with mammals? What do you think? Why do you think? Just say what you think.
Mammals can reproduce faster.
That's
Slower.
why specifically males? Why are males always the main thing?
The whole science of pregnancy.
Exactly.
So they can afford to like keep. Yeah, they can keep sleeping around, make more babies.
Essentially, yeah, a male, essentially just needs to spend maybe a minute or two to get the job done. So they can have a shit ton, and depending on how many they can do in a day, they can.
That's a very, very pessimistic estimation.
Bruh, some animals don't last 3 seconds. Like there is some that last like 20 minutes, some that last 4 hours, some that last 3 seconds. Depends on factors, which I wish I knew. I can't say I know any of them.
But octopi, it doesn't take very long simply because oftentimes the male just rips out their genitals simply because they don't want to get eaten at the end of the mating cycle.
Lovely. Well, we were talking about mammals, so
Also,
that doesn't count.
One more thing. This is unrelated, but the anglerfish.
Oh!
Male
Yeah, I know about the anglerfish. Go on.
Yeah, that shit's fucked up. Like, the male fuses into the female and becomes like a chimera and simply provides reproductive stock.
Yeah,
their
basically.
only focus. They're just
They just bite, they just latch on, and then over time they just sort of dissolve into her, and they just become a giant sack of... They just become a giant sack of jizz, essentially, and just pump it in whenever she asks for it.
Oh god.
Yeah, that's essentially what it turns into.
It's like very unique among the animal kingdom.
Very unique, very disturbing, very strange. Nature's scary. God doesn't exist because of that.
Yeah, that's the only example of unicell. Yeah, that sort of fusion doesn't happen aside from like the evolution of the nucleus or the mitochondria.
Yeah, true. That it's not a very common situation to see in nature anymore.
Yeah, that stuff is fascinating.
So, what do we think then towards the whole? What other factors could influence the difference between a species that tends towards monogamy or polygamy? Because there seems to be a lot of cases where birds tend to be monogamous, right? But then there's others where they're not. So things like swans and penguins and a bunch of other series of birds that I can't think of right now because I'm not a bird expert.
Wait, penguins aren't monogamous?
No, penguins are monogamous. So are swans and many other types of birds. But then there's things...
Apparently,
Ooh, that was loud.
apparently lovebirds actually are mostly monogamous, but have extramarital parents.
Oh, lovely. So
Lovely.
so they like cucking each other.
So basically, lovebirds cheat each other. Lovebirds cheat on each other.
Nice. They produce cuck birds. They should just be called cuck birds at that point.
Jesus.
I mean, what? That's literally what it is.
No, they ought to be called bastard fowl.
No,
Or
that would...
foul bastard.
No. Bastards are children that you had illegitimately.
A bunch of them probably are.
I mean, they don't have marriage, so I guess it's legitimate. I don't know if you can have a bastard if you don't have marriage involved.
Speaking of which, can I talk about Pete's example of Solomon?
In a little bit, because I think we're still on the topic of the biological stuff.
Anyway, where were we?
We're trying to come up with other aspects that might influence within monogamy and polygamy within a species. I don't know what that sort of stuff would be. That's why I brought up the bird example. Hello. I brought up the bird example because I was trying to figure out, because I was asking kind of things could define between monogamy and polygamy. Birds seem to have a tendency towards monogamy. Some mammals do not, but some mammals do. And other mammals that are not social just straight up mate with whoever is nearby if they think they're good enough.
Anyway, I guess close-knit social groups are an important factor for having polygamy. Which
Yeah.
interestingly mirror the Mormon communities, I would argue.
That's... Well, the thing is, when it comes to social tight-knit groups, don't humans fall under that umbrella just in general?
I guess, like, the threshold of how tight-knit a group is
Okay,
a bit more...
I'm curious though. Does the tight knit? What would determine a tight knit community? Like, let's differentiate between a not so tight knit and a super tight knit one.
Well, okay, before we talk about that, we should probably say that the community has to be made up of, well, it
The
has
same
to be
species.
multiple families. But yeah, same species.
Yeah, no. But why multiple families exactly?
To maintain a healthy genetic stock.
I suppose so.
What if
but
it's a really big family?
yeah, that too. Because if it's a
Yes,
really
yeah, that
really
one.
big family, the genetic variability would eventually become more or less the exact same thing after a certain amount of generations.
Habsburgs.
It would take, there would be a bit of a genetic bottleneck for just a moment there, but after that, it would be pretty easy.
Quote, testicle as small as a peppercorn. Anyway, where were we?
What
Oh, yeah.
determines a community that would be considered tight-knit enough to, at least in your view, indicate higher chances of a polygamous tendency? Could you hear me?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that one.
Oh, okay, good. I was worried. It seems my internet's gotten completely stable since that one crash for a moment, so that's good. Pete, what about you? What do you think might be some properties of some sort of community feature that is required for this sort of thing?
There generally
even
needs to be
entirely
very
sure what's
close
up.
proximity.
What? One more time?
Like, generally there has to be a very close proximity. Resources need to be shared equally. Well, they need to be shared, at least. If not equally. Probably not equally. But yeah.
Why? I'm curious as to why you think that is a requirement.
Okay, maybe not requirement, but more of an indicator.
Oh, okay. Why? I do that a lot, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm trying to articulate it somehow.
Okay, you think about that in the meantime. Pete, what do you have to say? The question here is, we think that social trends, or at least social tendencies within a species, tend towards more polygamous preferences within the males of the species if they happen to be mammalian. What, in the case of humans, could be considered as some sort of trait within a community that would be sufficiently tight-knit enough to produce these tendencies, in your opinion?
I kind of mentioned earlier, it seems like it's almost a reward. Like, the high-ranking people seem to be the ones who are able to indulge in it, so to speak.
I object
I'm not-
to that, and I will
so-
talk about that later.
Wait. So that means Pete is insinuating, at least, I'm not sure if on purpose or not, but it sounds like he's insinuating that at least within a community, there has to be a form of hierarchical system in place to determine certain aspects of commodity, I guess.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good point.
That does make sense. Because
Generally,
if
in mammals, there's usually one alpha male that controls all the females. Like in monkeys, I believe males after they reach a certain age go off to usurp another kingdom, so they can take over all the females.
They can also just
Generally,
sneak.
males at breeding age aren't tolerated.
They can also do
Mammal.
they can also do it sneakily, but that's another matter.
Yeah, there has to be a social structure in place with one person on top.
that does make sense, because if there's not enough mating to go around with polygamy, then someone's got to win.
Get the fuck out.
What? No, wait. That Pete makes a good point. Like, I just thought what he said just made
No, I
sense.
mean,
it
they
clicked.
need
It
to,
clicked
like-
something. It clicked something in my head
No,
here.
I'm not telling him that he should get the fuck out. I mean that, like,
I know.
there's not enough mating
Wait,
to go around.
before I forget the thought, before the thought goes away from me, the thing that Pete said reminded me that, yes, considering how evolution works, if there is a hierarchical system, that would imply that the reproduction will mostly go to the alpha/betas of the system, whatever those are. Like, I'm not sure if that applies to all systems, because it seems like the alpha, beta, omega, whatever system doesn't apply to all social hierarchies. So, like wolves, for example, it seems to not have been a thing. But in some species, it seems to hold true. In those cases, if
Dude,
the
you
male...
sound like an incel.
It doesn't matter. In most cases, if there is a dominating male that is leading the reproduction, in that case, the other males won't be able to easily reproduce. And if they can't reproduce and they die, their genetic lineage dies. And with it, because of the dominant male being the one reproducing, they will tend genetically as well to be predisposed towards polygamy. So it's sort of like this sort of feedback loop system. Strangely enough. If you have complete control over who makes the babies, and it's me, a lot of the aspects that I hold are going to be reflective of basically the entire species in a way, or at least the tribe. And that will tend towards more people, especially if they have to go off to usurp another thing. If that sort of system keeps maintaining itself for long enough, it could become a genetic level change.
Oh,
That
that's
makes
an
sense.
interesting point. Like, because all the males... You're saying the males eventually become all related to each other in some way.
All the children will be like the dominant male, except for a few stragglers, right? But if those stragglers are unable to reproduce because of another dominant male that happened to be dominant due to the previous one's genetics that have it tend towards greater violence or whatever the fuck it is necessary to become a dominant male, then the ones that are stragglers will be less and less and less and less common. So the tendency towards polygamy will maintain itself from that genetic line, because it's the only one that seems to be maintaining throughout this entire process, assuming that happens.
Speaking of which, this may or may not be relevant, but I believe male lions, upon ascension to the alpha role status, actually kill off the former alpha males, the male heirs.
That's another good point. Yeah, as cruel as that is a way to ensure, at the very least, your own offspring would be the ones that are maintaining the lineage, right?
I swear, they're like Turkic monarchies.
I mean, yeah, but the point here is that, oh my god, the fact that humans have actually done something like that kind of puts it into perspective even more when you think about it. It just shows, it goes to show that we kind of seem to have those traits more than we like to think we do.
We're basically big dumb animals who like to wear false skins.
I guess. we are a lot like those monkeys in a sense because we are kind of related to them pretty closely. So there's a very good chance that at some point we branched off towards more monogamy because of the requirement. So there's a chance that humans may have started with, like, or the descendants of humans started with polygamy. And I don't know for sure. This is just complete speculation. But there's a possibility that our ancestors started off with more polygamous tendencies, and we were mostly male polygamous in nature, female monogamous in nature for the most part, and that slowly began to drift towards a different direction once we started gaining, like, brain mass and capacity to use tools, and the requirement to be gestated for longer periods of time, requiring less periods of time rather, requiring a longer period of care, right? So because of the longer period of care, that would mean that the females would have to choose more selectively for people who would be willing to stay within that case.
Hold up. Wouldn't long gestation also encourage monogamy because the female requires more care in that time?
One more time.
Wouldn't longer gestation periods require more monogamy because females require care in that time?
It completely depends on how long you have to care for the kid once it's born for it to be able to move.
I suppose so.
So, like, I'm not sure how it is with gorillas and monkeys, but I believe it's like a year, maybe 9 months, 10 months. Like on day 10, they can already like grab onto their mom for dear life, no matter what. So it's like they don't have to do too much work.
Have that reflex too.
Not as extreme though, unfortunately. We can't grab on for dear life. We can just sort of grab the fingers a little bit.
There's a kid who saved herself from drowning, from being aborted by water bucket by just grabbing onto the edge for dear life.
That's creepy. I don't want to know about that anymore. Thank you. We'll talk about that topic another time.
All right.
We'll talk about that on another podcast.
Abortion episode?
Possibly, but I don't think it's anytime soon because that is a touchy subject and we need a lot of people, I think.
Aww.
I feel like it's only fair to give that subject enough, like, due diligence for that, you know?
Don't we, like, do it when there's less people watching so we don't have to deal with the backlash?
I don't mean with people watching. I mean people present to talk.
I suppose.
Anywho, right, so, like, I think it has more to do with how long you have to take care of a kid before they're self-sufficient enough to, you know, not die instantly if left to their own devices. So with humans, it's like 5 years almost, just before they're able to just move on their own accord decently, right? And even then, it's not that great. And for us to reach adulthood, it takes, puberty at least, takes 13 years. That's a long-ass time. And with, let's see, I'm going to look up gorilla. Age. All right, cool. 7 years. So when gorillas are 7, they're about half our age. They get to that point. Let's look at chimpanzees. I'm curious. 9 years. So yeah, it seems that because chimpanzees aren't nearly as polygamous in general for the most part, they seem to be a lot more like us in that sense. Yeah, it seems that because of the length of time that you have to take care of the thing before it becomes a sufficiently working adult that can reproduce, tends towards determining more or less what might cause higher polygamous preferences within males of the species and monogamy in the females of the species, right?
Yeah.
That's what it seems like. Because, like, as soon as humans become the 13-year-old thing, like, it's not as soon, but, like, it's a gradual thing. But, like, as it gradually becomes longer and longer to have to care for a human child, the females will have to be more and more selective about who the hell becomes a daddy, and they have to be able to maintain that for longer.
Right.
So, oh God, it's a bit of a confusing situation there. How do I put this? I would imagine that because of that selectiveness that females are looking for, it would tend towards more monogamy in males because they have to be able to stick around more to care for the kid, because otherwise they die off.
Right.
And the ones that don't stick around, well, their kids probably died, and therefore their lineage just doesn't continue. So evolutionarily speaking, there's a much higher chance that monogamy is a better bet than the polygamous case where they just sort of run off and do it with any other female that happens to be nearby and don't take care of the kids.
I think my parents hated me then. Because if they wanted me to live, my dad wouldn't have lived.
What? Excuse what? What?
If they wanted me to live, then my dad wouldn't have left for cigarettes 10 years ago.
I get the joke, but for a second there I thought you were being sincere.
I mean, they probably hate me, but not for that reason.
So, yeah, it seems that monogamy would be the driving force that would tend towards the survival of the social species that requires an infant child to be raised for several years in order to be self-sufficient enough to survive for more than 3 seconds without choking on literally everything and bonking its head on everything until it dies.
Right.
Not to mention the intelligence that a human has will tend towards longer developmental cycles where things need to be passed on, and it's a bunch of culture stuff. There's a lot of little things that could easily tend towards that are sort of like a feedback loop. Do you guys think there might be some other factors that would affect it? Like, I'm struggling to think of some other stuff that could affect.
I think. Okay, forgive me if we on this, but generally, females are the limiting factor in reproduction. I mean.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. If the males were more limited themselves, do you think this would mean more? I think this would mean more monogamy.
Wait. What do you mean by more limited? More limited by what? More limited is in less of them, or more limited by they can only do it like once a month?
Yeah, they can't reproduce as much as they generally can now.
Huh.
Well, I mean to say that.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Like, let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
Species in which males can't have a slower reproduction rate generally tend to be more monogamous.
Slower reproduction, like the females, you mean?
No, the males. The less the male can reproduce, the more they have to invest into finding the right male. I mean, the right mate, and they're more encouraged to put more resources into like raising the child, since they can't just like fuck more into existence immediately.
We're assuming they're social creatures, right? Because there's plenty of non-social creatures that do that exact same thing you're talking about and don't give a fuck.
Of course we are. Yeah.
Okay, so in social creatures, okay, let's look at some factors here, because I know for a fact that when it comes to more polygamous species of monkeys, at least, they seem to have a greater testicle size in order to produce more, baby batter. It's not a joke. Like, that is something they have. They just have larger testicles than even humans do.
Like, okay, out of curiosity, are we talking about golf ball size or tennis ball size? Or perhaps grapefruit?
I think it's in between. I think it's somewhere in between. That's not a joke, man. I'm serious. They're kind of ridiculous.
In between grapefruit and tennis ball?
Oh god, those are bulls, man. Those are just straight up bulls. Oh yeah, that is another factor, isn't it? We kind of selectively bred for polygamous things for cows.
Yeah, we actively enforce polygamy through artificial insemination.
Huh. Interesting.
You didn't know that?
I mean, no, I I never thought about it more than anything.
Yeah, we literally make fleshlights for animals.
Oh, I know.
Like electric
I know.
tasers, like force them to mix the baby batter.
I'm aware that that happens. I just hadn't thought of the implications of it. Huh. Like the results of that, you know? Huh, interesting. That would tend towards that sort of thing. We would selectively go for bulls that have more to give, essentially. So yeah, that does make sense. Interesting. Well, in that sense, though...
Better the industrialized baby batter factory than the mom and pop operation.
Oh God. So that's another thing that some people have tried to discuss when it comes to like the human tendency to go towards one or the other, because human testicle size isn't extremely large, right?
Yes, it's pathetic compared to like baboons.
Compared to baboons, yeah, and stuff like other clearly polygamously rated animals. But at the same time,
not even golf balls.
But at the same time, ours are much bigger proportional to our bodies compared to a lot of other species. So
maybe that's a holdover from our tree-dwelling days.
From our tree-dwelling, probably more polygamous days, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, I mean, this conversation went in a more interesting direction than I thought it would. But still, it's like, yeah, that is interesting, so...
You're awfully fascinated by this.
I'm fascinated by anything evolutionary, honestly, dude. So, like, this is a super fascinating topic to me, because this stuff has to happen somehow.
Suddenly, it feels like my AP Environmental Science class has value for once.
I mean, anything helps, man. Pete, I don't know if you have anything to say about all of this nonsense talk about testicles and sperm.
Dude, this forest being attacked by the beaver festival.
Not really.
Well, he doesn't have anything to say on that.
Yeah, it's beaver mating season.
Lovely.
He's just trying not to get killed.
That's terrifying. The fact you have to say, try not to get killed.
Tree, and, like, you need to avoid getting killed by, like, fucking buck-toothed rodents.
You don't even need to be a pine tree, man. You don't even need to be a pine tree. Just be a dude wearing brown pants and be tall enough.
Meanwhile, like, the little shrub on the ground's laughing at you because they don't die every year. Apparently size does matter, but not in the way you think.
I'm trying to see if there could be any other defining factors here.
Resource availability, perhaps?
You know?
Well, okay, this probably has more to do with, like, population size than with, and reproduction rate than with, directly with polygamy, but yeah, the more resources there are, the more likely you are to, like, fuck more babies into existence. Like chickens, for instance. Their reproductive cycle lines up with the release of bamboo seedlings, because the more food there is, the more chance they have to make babies.
Huh. Yeah, chickens are an interesting case, too. Yeah, we exploit the concept of polygamy in the animal kingdom a lot, don't we?
Yeah, like, but this makes me wonder, why don't we exploit rabbits more?
You know...
Are rabbits useful?
You can eat them.
They don't take up much land, and they literally form the phrase. Why we really need to start eating rabbit meat more.
Rabbits contain a decent amount of meat. They're very passive. They're quite easy to maintain and very easy to feed. Essentially, they are a very good source of protein if you were to mass produce it in some way. The problem is they're also cute, and that's the main issue, I think, for a lot of people.
I think pigs are pretty cute.
Yeah, all animals are cute when they're babies, but I mean, like, the adult versions are also still cute, usually.
Have you not seen an adult cow, Jeff?
I've seen them
Have
move,
you
yes.
seen the little guys like chasing after a remote-controlled monster truck?
Yes, when they move. But when they're not moving, they're not as cute, usually. They have to do specific things.
I guess.
Like, usually. I'm not sure if many people agree with that. So, that's just the way that I've
They're not
seen
as
it.
cute as bunnies.
Yeah, exactly. They're not as cute as bunnies. Bunnies are bunnies.
We have an agriculture episode later on.
Sure. I don't know when, but we can definitely have one.
We need to talk about the creation of my kin.
You know, I'm also curious about that. But anywho.
And the seasonal exploitation of pines.
Well, I'm not affected by any of this. I'm a deistic boxing glove. What do I care?
Your mother is the result of aggressive colonialism, since latex requires a lot of land.
You know what? Now I'm going to figure out a whole pantheon for RPG to be the boxing god.
Yeah, well, okay. RPG is like the younger brother of the Muay Thai god.
Oh god, yeah, that would...
Is like, Taekwondo is the bastard son.
Or the cousin.
Wrestling
Okay.
is like the crackhead uncle.
Does it have to be martial arts based?
So his dad has to be the god of war.
Of course, the god of war.
But then, who would the god of war? Who would the mother be to produce martial arts?
The goddess of strategy, I guess.
Evolution.
Well, strategy is still kind of a general war
Diligence?
thing, right?
Strength of arms.
Diligence, training.
I guess. Ooh, training. That training works. But Pete, you work on that in the meantime, or in the background, or afterwards, whatever you feel like. But for now, let's continue with the conversation. I love the idea, though.
I am drawing the RPG family tree after this, I swear.
For reference, my younger sister actually used to do karate / taekwondo.
Okay, that's a start.
My actual little sister. And my nephew, I think, took up taekwondo too.
Alright, WWE is like the crackhead uncle. And the disappointed son that his father wrestling doesn't talk about.
Yeah, wrestling is the disappointed son.
Queensberry Rules is the father of
along with his older brother, Sambo, military Sambo.
No. WWE is the one who managed to make it in the movies and became a movie star.
No, WWE is just the one who sells like MLM goods.
I think WWE has got to be. He's got to be an
actor of some kind, like the very exaggerated kind.
The god of war.
On cocaine.
So the mother of most gods of martial arts is the goddess of diligence and training. The father is the god of war, but the god of war cheated on her with the god of acting and theater, and that's where WWE came in.
That's amazingly stupid. I love it.
RPG's brothers include Roman bare-fisted boxing.
Oh yeah, the Romans.
Queensberry Rules.
Dude, no, dude, that was my edgy teen phase.
Oh, and like the weird uncle that nobody talks about. That's called Backwaters grappling.
Wait, what?
The one involving the eye gouging and the.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's a real thing, by the way.
Krav Maga is like the cousin that just always gets into trouble.
No, Krav Maga is like the cousin who went for Russia for a summer and now thinks he's Russian.
I've never heard of Krav Maga.
Look it up. It's the Israel martial art, and it's very, very, very violent.
Wait, no, not Krav Maga.
How do I spell it?
Sistema is the cousin that went to Russia.
What? What do you say?
Krav Maga is the Israeli nationalist who attended one of the meetings and is now booked.
How do I spell it? Send the name so I can look it up later.
KRAV. Yeah.
KRAV, Make America Great Again.
MAGA, like a magazine.
Or Trump supporter.
So, right. So back to the topic, because we really strayed off for that moment, for a moment there.
I'm gonna keep working on this, I swear.
Go ahead. I look forward to it. We can present it on whatever martial arts episode we might make. Actually, we should do that at some point.
Yeah, we should.
We should do.
Sounds fun.
We could.
We
Let's
need to do it.
let's keep it as a
We do a bonus
tentative.
episode?
I'm already,
Let's keep it as a
I'm already
tentative next
thinking-
topic.
Can we do a bonus
I'm already
episode
thinking
on
of it as an
Eva and
extended
weapon martial
pantheon
arts?
with Sex as the god of knowledge.
Sex is just the god of knowledge for some reason. Okay.
Second. Yeah, let's get back to it then.
Right. So, I think it's time for concluding, at least on the second topic. Yeah, we're still on the second topic, guys.
Hey, what about resources?
Oh, yeah, resources. Wait, back to discussion. Sorry.
Yeah, more
resor-
resources, more babies.
I'm trying to think of examples here, because, like, lions seem
Chickens.
to... Chickens are a good example of that actually applying, but what about lions?
Humans. There are less babies in depression periods and
That's
economic recession.
True. But I'm trying to think... I'm not trying to think in terms of anthropology and sociology here. I'm trying to think, like, in terms of evolutionary terms right now. So it's like I'm trying to think of lions. Lions don't tend to have incredibly large amounts of resources, though.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, not lions then.
Yeah, but why? Why are they the exception here? Why would they be the
Because
exception?
They're, I guess.
Would it be out of necessity in that case because they're more predatory? Like they have to be more
No,
aggressive in
let's-
nature usually,
I've
or
been
I'm not
thinking
sure.
about this wrong. Let me think about this again.
All right, I know. I understand the concept, because like when it comes to gorillas, I can understand because there's like resources for food, basically everywhere.
I'm gonna make a very weak hypothesis about this.
Okay.
Lions depend on very large kills. Like, they're taking down individual weak zebras or antelopes or some shit.
Okay.
So their kills are slower paced and more spaced out. So like the number of zebras in an area doesn't really matter as long as they have one or two targets. Therefore, they're not affected as strongly by availability of resources than other mammals like chickens. Well, chickens aren't mammals, but regardless.
Okay, so in that case scenario, that would imply that the lack of resources would necessarily dwindle the population size capacity, though.
I
Right?
suppose it does.
I'm just trying to go through the logic here. So like if that happens, if there's a lower population size, what if, and I am not 100% sure of this, but I feel like the African savanna a long time ago must have been a lot more lush than it is now.
What?
I think it was. Yes, I do have. I have an inkling of a feeling that around mid Africa region, it was a lot more tropical, in a sense, and therefore was a lot more lush, and
In
they
the
had a lot more
Sahara.
wildlife. Yeah, around the Sahara. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Um,
Sahara used to be a lush jungle until.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So like, if we're
climate
considering
restrictions.
if we're considering that past situation specifically with lions, and imagining that they mostly evolved in that sort of environment, then the decrease in population size, I don't see actually decreasing the polygamy aspect of their tendencies, because they would already be ingrown and it would be sufficient to just kill a few things. As long as they maintain the population size low, it would still function, and it would still yield the same results, especially if they grew the tendency to kill the young of rival ones. You know?
Yeah.
So there's a chance, and I don't know if this is true, but there's a chance that in the distant past, lions evolved with those resources and possibly a higher population in mind, and therefore had evolved a tendency towards more polygamous relationships in that way because of the resources. But it seems that polygamy isn't something that goes away necessarily due to scarce resources. Because I'm trying to think of it in the most logical way I can at the moment, and I can't quite see a decrease in population size really benefiting monogamy in any way.
I see.
I'm not sure if you guys can, because at the moment I can't.
I'm just sort of lost at this point. I'm not
Assume a polygamous creature with a polygamous series of females or whatever, and one male. Assume that they have, I don't know, let's say 50 for now. Assuming resources become scarce, that population will thin out. Assuming that we still have that one male and 10 females instead, would polygamous tendencies be bred out at some point? Because I can't think of a single reason why it would. Because it would still be able to maintain the population just fine. And it would still function because of its feedback loop tendencies. The case for humans is because of the long gestation period plus the long care period plus a bunch of other factors, right? So like with lions, I'm not sure if that affects it in the same way. Like there were pressures for humans to become more monogamous, which a lot of it had to do with social things, I think. But you know, that's a hard question to answer right now. I'm not sure.
I think we're done here for now then.
Okay, let's get to a little bit of a conclusion then. What do we think about the predisposition of humans at the moment? Because I think my mind's been changed a little bit, having discussed this a bit. What do you guys think?
Humans, although formally may have once been polygamous, are now predisposed towards polygamy due to long ingrained evolutionary and cultural and resulting cultural and social factors, tendencies. Yeah.
Factors, I think, is a better word.
Factors works, yes.
Pete, what did you gather from all of this, if you gathered anything at all?
I guess he's still too busy dealing with the beavers.
Not really much that hasn't been said.
Yeah, but what did you gather here? Like, what did you learn something? I'm just curious. Is there anything that you may have learned that you previously didn't think about, or what?
It's sorry, my brain is being slow.
Well, at least in my case, you can interrupt me at any time and I'll stop. In my case, at least, I think I have a better comprehension now, and I believe that I would increase the tendency towards polygamy in humans now from my previous estimate, simply because of that historical acumen and the social aspects that would increase that sort of stuff and all the other things that we discussed a little bit. Because of how humans are now, I can see the polygamous nature tending to increase. So my estimate would raise from male tendencies. Yeah, it would increase, not because, one, we have better resources, we have more hierarchical systems, we are much larger as a social system, we have much larger possible groups of friends that can take care of the people and yada yada yada, and we're also more open in general, culturally speaking, to the idea. So I would say, at least...
Is this a prediction or an observation?
It's an observation more than anything. So I would say that, at the very least for me, I would raise the estimate from male preference or tendency towards preferring something along the lines of polygamy, not necessarily being able to act upon it, but just like a preference, to about 18%. And for females, like, I'm talking biological females here, not biological, whatever. Whatever, actually both non-biological and non-biological females, whatever point is. Both cases, whatever. Point is, the brains think they want polygamy more often in males than I first thought, and I would say it's about 18% for males, and I'd say it's about 6% for females, maybe less, maybe around 5% for females. It's not a huge increase, but it's still an increase, you know?
How recent are you thinking about this change?
What do you mean by recent?
I mean, on what time scale are you thinking of this change is happening on?
Oh, no, I'm not talking about these changes. It's more of, I feel like I misinterpreted the information before.
Oh, I see. I thought you thought that humans were getting more polygamous.
There is a chance of that, but I feel it's more like the current culture we live in gives rise to the tendency more often, like the preference tendency. Because we are better equipped to handle it, I guess, is the best way I'd put it. Because of all the things we just talked about, it makes me think that we are well equipped to be able to handle it in case someone, one, prefers that, and two, is able to act upon it properly, you know?
Okay, I was gonna say, like, on a grand time scale, it seems to have been going away.
Going away, yeah. It does seem to be going away. That is what I also believe, too. It seems to be going down. But the thing is, considering the way that human evolution now currently works, which is, it doesn't, really. It almost never does anything. Because there's no natural selection anymore, pretty much. Or very, very minuscule.
There's still social selection.
Yeah, there's very minuscule amounts of it. So yeah, it does exist in a little bit in social selection as well, which is a form of mild artificial selection amongst ourselves. But it's like the differences are still minimal, you know. Like to our point currently, it's only been a couple thousand years for that sort of stuff to happen, right? At most. And even then, we're not completely segregated at any point in history. So I would imagine that, at the very least, on an evolutionary scale, it wouldn't be sufficient time for it to actually make too much of a difference, you know? At least that's the way that I would see it, at least.
Alright. Can I finally talk about Pete and his hypothesis about polygamy as a reward?
Oh, sure, go ahead. Let's talk about that for a little bit.
Alright, I object to your thesis simply because kings are in a unique position with political factors that encourage them to have concubines and extra wives. Kings need heirs, simply. They need someone. They need someone to continue their line. It's very crucial for them to secure their family's continued status. So they're encouraged to, like, fuck more people. Cause, like, if one of them can't bear you any children or male heirs, they're gonna be more. Therefore, they're gonna want more people to. They're okay. They probably enjoy it, and they probably do use it as a reward. It probably is somewhat of a reward, but it's not entirely without its necessity.
This makes sense. I would argue all it does, though, is shift around cause and effect. Rather than it is a reward, therefore kings get it, I think you've just switched it around. So it makes sense for kings to do it, and now, culturally speaking, it makes sense for people to view it as a reward.
You know, that's interesting. That is an interesting point. Which brings us a little bit, not directly, but indirectly at least, to our third topic, which is, what do you guys believe are the legal ramifications of perfectly normal polygamous marriages becoming a thing?
Well, okay, it certainly complicates divorce. It also complicates, like, inheritance, most definitely.
Well, that's the thing. When it comes to inheritance, it always seems to be a case of, it's just whatever the person who's giving the inheritance wants.
There's suddenly a lot more people you need to divide your wealth to.
Oh, totally.
And,
But then
like,
again, but
yeah.
think of it this way. What if someone had one wife and 20 children?
Okay, so that's not a legal ramification, but that's more of like a...
Social,
That is-
interpersonal ramification.
Oh,
One wife and 20
also-
children is a reality TV show.
Speaking of social
that's-
ramification, it
That's
also
mostly not even a
covers
joke.
life insurance. Like,
There's
nobody's
literally a
gonna
TV
sell
show.
that shit
All right.
with polygamy.
Stop for a minute. So both of you are saying two different things. Pete, that sounds like an amazing reality TV show, and I think that exists, and I want to see it sometime just for the hell of it.
I have seen it.
Around polygamy?
It's
No, 20 children.
no, it's called I think when it first went on, it was called 17 Kids and Counting, because that's how many they had at the time. But then future seasons they kept having kids, and they went up to 21 kids and counting.
Oh God.
I think they had the world record. I think they had the
Jesus.
world record for most kids from one mother.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, like, how do you give enough love to each children?
How do you remember their names?
parent-
Are you
I
trying
remember
are they
one
trying
was
to
named
raise,
Jock.
like, a third world mercenary army or something?
They were
Just give each of
They
them
were a
one
Christian-
piece of- You've got yourself a gang.
they were a Christian homeschooled family, so they were popular among people that I knew.
What?
Oh, nice.
Apparently, the mom was a friend of my mom's.
That's weird. Cool, but weird.
That's terrifying.
It's interesting.
I mean, I met a family with over 10 kids.
Yeah, my dad comes from a family with at least 6 kids, so it's like I can see the possibility. Regardless of that, legal ramifications. We're going back to that, right? So you were talking about something with insurance, Salvo, I believe.
Yeah, nobody's gonna fucking sell life insurance anymore in a world of polygamy.
Why?
Because there's a whole lot more people you need to, like, start giving up payments to.
But no, there's the same amount of people. They're just marrying a specific person instead of other specific people.
I guess it's true.
So, like, wow, I'm not sure about the way life insurance works with this. So, like, when you get married, do you get life insurance for only the spouse or what?
Let me look at. Well, I believe it covers spouse and children generally.
So, wait, so I'm a little bit confused then. Then why would that make too much of a difference? What would be the difference between that, like, one guy with 4 wives and, like, 3 marriages? Like, what would be the difference?
Well,
Four marriages, for example. Like, wouldn't it be kind of the same amount?
this gets into another interesting point, but I believe that they're gonna be encouraged to have a lot more children because, let's say, they're probably working in this day and age. Well, they probably have a lot more economic power simply because there's suddenly 4 salaries contributing to a family's income, and not just 2. So they're gonna be incentivized to have more children, no?
I don't know. That is very specific because it depends on education level as well as a bunch of other factors.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's not. Yeah, I guess.
That part's hard to determine. So I'm not certain.
I guess it really doesn't.
Although
the kid part is hard to determine. But the thing you brought up about the various salaries maintaining the household, that seems a lot more important.
Yeah, we should. economic ramifications of polygamy.
Pete, what were you gonna say?
Salvo, you have been typing in the supply closet on and off for a very long time, and it's distracting.
It is a little bit. Anywho, that aside, the fact that there are many salaries instead of just two contributing to the factors of living, I don't know the exact quantity in which it would increase their capacity to spend, because with more people that would require more living space, more food, more everything in general, right? So I'm not sure how much that would contribute to the pool of resources. Percentage-wise, I mean, compared to like a one-on-one marriage situation, civil union, if you will. I don't actually know the specifics of how much that would help. Anyone have any thoughts on that? Because I'm very much drawing a blank.
I'm wondering how open relationships might factor into this.
Open relationships. Well, those are a little bit more complicated because there's a lot of factors that go into the concept of an open relationship. Because
Sorry, my Discord died.
Oh, okay, don't worry. We're just trying to... At the moment, we're discussing, like, what the ramifications of open relationships would be for the like, economic factors and or marriage and or just general social
Did
stuff.
we just pass by the economic ramifications of...
Just for the moment.
You started typing in the supply closet again. Are you saying something?
My push-to-talk hotkey is bound to space, so I'm forever typing.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, change... Then... Yeah, okay, I understand then. Never mind. Oh, God, what am I thinking about? It's just... Open relationships are complicated and messy and confusing because it's hard to know whether it's distinguishable from polygamy. Because a lot of the time they kind of want to know who the other people are. But in the cases of truly open relationships, that's another matter entirely. And I don't actually know what would happen in that case. Because in that case, I don't know if you could even constitute the possibility of a marriage, right? Like the civil union thing kind of requires the relationship to not be extreme, like beyond polygamy, you know? At least that's the way I think it. Not sure. Pete, what do you think? You're the one who brought up the question.
I brought up the question because I did not know the answer.
Well, I mean, you're allowed to present what you think might be an answer.
So marriage isn't actually
You've become robotic. Salvo, I don't know what the hell happened, but I can barely hear you right now.
Can you still... Is this better?
Yes, that is much better. Much better. Thank you. Okay, Pete, repeat yourself. You turned into a robot, so say it again.
Sorry, my thing's lagging out.
It's okay.
Evolutionarily speaking, there's really no difference between marriage and relationships that produce children, right? So now
Yeah.
I'm wondering if, in some cases, an open relationship might be indistinguishable from polygamy.
Well, it would be, but the thing is, we're
depends on-
talking about
it
legal
depends on how people think
ramifications.
about it.
True, but we're all talking about legal ramifications here in particular. So it doesn't matter too much. We have to be able to determine whether or not an open relationship can be considered in legal terms the same as a marriage, you know?
In legal terms, why would
what?
because like even just committed relationships are considered legally distinct from marriage. So like legally, why does it matter?
Mainly because of the benefits that seem to come from marriage in particular. And it depends on the country a lot of the time, but there's a lot of different things that it affects. So like the marital tax deduction, for example, is one of them. Then there's the Social Security benefits, prenuptial agreements.
You have that in
It depends on the country. I'm not sure if Chile has that. There's also the obvious in legal decision making stuff that happens a lot of the time. Health insurance benefits, where you can usually use your spouse's health insurance and get a family version of it. Paternity child benefits, leave benefits. Let's see, there's a couple other ones, but like legally, those are the kinds of things that happens, like the prenups, it's a lot of monetary stuff, basically. I think tax deduction is probably one of the bigger ones. So in that case, like if it's a tax deduction, for example, what would be the thing, like in a polygamous relationship at least, for now let's assume open relationships and polygamous relationships are basically the exact same thing. Except the polygamous one is just including marriage, okay? So legally speaking, they would have the benefits of marriage as opposed to the open relationship. Let's just put that as like a presupposition here. So in the case of the polygamous marriages thing, if there was a tax deduction based on marital rights, would it deduce more depending on how many, or would it maintain the same throughout regardless of how many you have? I'm asking.
Shit, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Of course.
I think
Please.
Okay, let me repeat it first. So, marital tax deduction is a thing in a lot of countries. I don't know which ones exactly, but it is a thing. Would the tax deduction increase depending on how many wives you had or husbands you have? Or would it be first marriage and anyone who joins gets the tax deduction equidistant regardless of how many people you marry?
Arguably, I believe it would be equidistant.
Yeah, I would think so too.
Would be, but the rate would be a lot less simply because there's a lot more people you get to claim deductions on.
That too.
The government wouldn't want their cash taken away so easily. No.
Okay, Pete, what are you thinking?
The IRS is a scary beast.
I think I don't know enough about marriage laws to even begin to answer that question.
Fair enough. But like, what would you think would be more beneficial? Like, what do you think insurance, tax, governmental bodies would go for more? I believe the more equidistant thing, because like if it's constantly tax reducing, then people could abuse the system and have 20 wives or something and then pay back basically no taxes every year.
Yeah, that would probably
not be in the interest of the government.
Right.
So there's a very good chance that they wouldn't allow for that sort of thing. At least not with the tax deductions. Probably more of a, you got married, well, you get the same amount of deduction as everybody else. Fuck you. It's probably how it would go. The Social Security benefits are interesting. That's a lot more confusing though. So the Social Security thing. There's also things like retirement benefits and there's a lot of little benefits here and there, but overall, it seems that would be. Would it constitute major changes in the legal system though? If polygamous marriages became a more commonplace thing?
I think you'd have to know more about law than I do to answer. This is kind of a line of questioning that requires more expertise than the others.
Yeah, it does feel that way, doesn't it?
Agreed.
And none of us are legal experts. We need legal experts. We don't have enough legal experts.
I mean, I could try and like get an old contact on here.
Assuming they're open to talking.
The guy, I mean, he's pretty busy with work, but he's never mind.
That makes it a lot more difficult. But regardless,
He's a tech lawyer, but anyway.
I have a bad experience with tech lawyers, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, I don't want to go.
Pretty personable. From
Oh no, it's nothing about him. It was a very specific case for me, and I don't want to go into that. So Pete, what were you saying? Ideally,
what was that?
you're saying something like ideally.
Oh yeah. You said we should get a legal expert in here, and I was going to say ideally we would all just know everything.
That's true. That's true. That would be the ideal. Unfortunately, we don't.
Unfortunately, the god of war was not a close relative to the god of knowledge.
Yeah, it seems that the training goddess took more precedence there.
The training goddess was actually a bastard child between knowledge and diligence.
That's not a bad way to put it.
But she was legitimized, so she's treated with equal
respect. Yeah. Anywho.
Unlike Muay Thai.
Muay Thai is treated with a lot of respect these days, actually.
Not Muay Thai. WWE.
WWE. Yeah, no. WWE is...
Unlike the others, he was never legitimized.
You know what's interesting to me? Kung Fu seems to be like that... that cousin you have who always got, like, the best grades in school and, like, always did amazing and everyone loved him and stuff, but as soon as he, has to enter the workforce, his whole life falls apart.
He's also the guy who got a bunch of girls pregnant and ended up
Probably.
having a lot of children.
Probably. Like, yeah, like, that was the thing. Like, that's what caused his ruin.
His most mainly known son would be Shaolin style Kung Fu.
Probably.
There are others.
It'd probably be like the most known son. Anywho, Pantheon later.
Kande Combat is the one that boasts about how he has a big dick.
I don't know. Honestly, we kind of just plowed through the discussion for the legal ramifications thing, which is fine because we've already taken a huge chunk of time. We took over an hour, pretty much, talking about just the human thing, the predispositions. So, yeah, we took a long time there. So, at the very least, the legal ramifications, it seems like there could be plenty of them, but I don't think it would be a tremendous change to the legal system as a whole. Like, I feel like it would be more like just adding an addendum to a bunch of things, you know? That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
It's more like an expansion than an overall change. Depends, I don't know the specifics of it, but if it were actually made decently, it would just be more of an addendum.
Marriage is a board game, and polygamy is the extension for multiple players.
It's the extension pack.
No, it's like the DLC that nobody pays for.
Or that too, that works. That also works. Oh boy.
Adultery is like the unofficial cracked version.
No, it's the modded version.
That people play.
It's the modded version.
The one that's yeah.
Oh god. Anyways.
The
so,
one you get without telling anybody.
So, I mean, I guess we agree then that at the very least, it seems from our limited knowledge of the legal system about marriage laws, that chances are polygamy would have a very small increase in the likelihood of affecting, the entirety of the marriage law system. It'd be more like a bunch of addendums added to it. Or maybe they go to the base and just add a single addendum and that would be enough. I don't know. If it were done by a good programmer, that would be enough.
What?
Programming and legal systems actually have a lot more in common than you think.
Yeah, I guess there's both sets of rules.
They're just a bunch of sets of rules that are interrelated with each other. And reference each other. And that is exactly what programming is.
And yeah, it always takes like a skilled person to actually
understand what the fuck is happening.
Laws.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. It's just a different application.
And there are always people who like buy people to like make the rules how they want them to be made.
Oh yeah, that's another factor. The main difference between programmers and law related careers is that the programmers kind of make up their own new law system every time. That's kind of the difference. It's like they're constantly making new law systems every time instead of just working on the same one forever.
The big difference is that one's not fueled by sleep deprivation and beer, and the other one is
coffee. Not beer. Coffee.
So that's why I failed computer science class.
Yeah, exactly. You're getting it now. Also, you're underage, and you should be punished for that. Anyways, so moving on, I think to the last topic, which I think is more on the side of philosophy, which is where we could like talk about this a bit more extensively. I think, unless we all agree, and then we're just done. Which is, what do you think? Should we be more accepting of the practice of polygamy in general? Like, I'm gonna go for more of the moral stance here, like philosophical, social, psychological, philosophical stance.
I think that question.
Not gonna lie.
What?
It's up to them.
Pete, say it again.
I think that question comes with the assumption that we're not, which I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, Pete.
I just figured I'd.
Let me put it this way: there are many people I've talked to, just in general, who are against it. My girlfriend is one example who is against polygamy, and she expressed her reasoning, which turned out to be emotional. And then once I pointed it out to her, she was like, "Huh, you're right. There is no good logical reason to be against polygamy," and that kind of thing. It was the situation where she couldn't think of any actual logical reasons to be against it. It was more of a relationships would be very difficult to maintain.
You certainly chose right.
So, I mean, I agree with her in the sense that it would be very difficult to maintain it. Right? Polygamy is not an easy system to maintain if you're not incredibly skilled at handling relationships between multiple people.
Ooh, may I?
Okay, express your opinion, regardless.
I'm not gonna take a stance on this, but I'm gonna ask a question.
Okie
How is
dokie.
this going to affect the care of children? How does this affect child rearing?
Okay, wait. That's a good question.
Steven Universe an accurate representation of polygamous child rearing? If Rebecca Sugar just making a polygamy fetish in Steven Universe.
I had never thought of that.
I stopped paying for just a second. I stopped paying attention for just a second, and now there's laughing.
Oh God, he just said that Steven Universe
Tell him.
He basically just said that Steven Universe is a representation of what a polygamous child rearing situation would be like.
I haven't even seen the show.
Well, basically, he's raised by 3 random alien crystal ladies, and his dad's there.
Wait, that means Berserk is an example of male polygamous child rearing.
Wait, which one?
Berserk.
Berserk. I guess so. That's a little bit less obvious, though. That one's a little bit harder to say.
Like,
Regardless, that was good. Maybe, maybe. But the thing is, it's more of a case of returning to a bit of that social aspect.
okay, one more question. If it does affect child rearing, does it matter? Does it matter whether it should be legal or not? Do we have the moral authority to say, because this adversely affects child growth, no, you cannot have a relationship? And why am I beginning to sound like an anti-gay pastor all of a sudden?
It does end up
I'm not
sounding
even
like...
arguing the point. I'm just asking questions. And
I know,
suddenly
and
I
it
feel
sounds...
very, very Catholic.
And it sounds very, very, intolerant for some reason. Yeah, I understand. No, but they're good questions.
Nah, I ain't throwing shade on anybody. I'm just asking questions.
They're good questions. What was the first one again? First off, how would it affect child rearing? I believe I'm just gonna go for one by one. So I think that one at the very least.
It would make things very, very complicated.
It would make things complicated.
I know.
Or it would make things really easy.
You know that saying about it takes a village to raise a child?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I believe it would make the child more worldly, because they're drawing on 3 different experiences.
Or more.
Or more.
Could be way more than that, we don't know.
But like, if at a certain point, I think if you end up with too many people, then like there's not going to be as much of an interpersonal connection with each one. You can only really maintain close relationships with a number of people.
Yes, the currently thought of estimate to be the maximum amount people can take into account is about 150 people.
According to Steven Universe, 3 works.
I don't know. I don't know how many.
If the fanfiction shipping is canon anyway.
That does make a good point, but at the same time, I do not know if a polygamous a series of marriages like that would actually function if it became super big, because the husband has to also keep track of the wives.
I mean, apparently there's
or vice versa,
it work. Like, the guy has everyone takes turns, apparently, so nobody gets favoritism.
Well, yeah,
that's interesting.
I mean, that's fine, but at the same time, if there's 20 of them,
I don't think that's any way to raise a child. I'm not gonna
lie. I figured, but
20 is unreasonable.
That's what I mean. But like, if it's 20 of them, for example, it would be almost impossible. At least I don't know. Maybe there's some magician out there who knows how to do it. But I would imagine that it's near impossible to maintain a proper relationship with all of those different polygamous relationships. It'd be incredibly difficult.
Practically.
Wait, I think this is a moot point simply because you can't stop people.
Wait, guys, stop talking over each other, please. Get used to stopping. Okay, Pete is turning into a robot, so.
The beaver's got him.
Pete, one more time.
Practically speaking, that's a worry about 20 wives, because I don't think anyone would ever get to that number.
Well, that's the thing. I'm trying to go for an edge case situation where it would be extreme, right? Just to see if it would actually be detrimental, That's the reason I put 20 as a number, because it's a ridiculous number. Salva, what was your thing about it being a moot point?
Because we can't stop people from entering into marriage simply because they're not fit to raise a child. In the West, anyway, in the West.
Well, there's a difference between marriage and making a child.
I guess so.
So my opinions on that are very different, because I don't think people should be allowed to just make children whenever they feel like it. I feel like they have to be the kind of people who are either trained or been approved to have kids, but based off of their ability to raise one, not because of who they are. because we have way too
Well,
many
then-
kids. We have way too many kids that get brought up into situations where they're hated forever.
That's, I mean, we could go into a whole other.
Yeah, we can go into. This is a topic for another time, I think. But yeah, essentially, I don't know for sure about that. But since they're different things, it doesn't matter how many people they can marry. We're assuming the case that, for one, I feel like if polygamy were to become a thing, like polygamous marriages, there would be a cap at some point before it starts to become very unstable. You know? I'm not sure about this, but I would say above 7 is probably where it would become a fairly unstable situation.
Why 7?
Because there's only so many days in the week.
7's the lucky number, right?
Because there's only so many days in the week. And if they are if they're divvying up the time spent, then they would want to generally prioritize daily regimens, right?
Then
And if there's
we had,
more
like,
than
a
that,
20-day week, then
then maybe. But the thing is, we have
or
7-day
like
weeks,
a
and
30-day week.
if there's more than that, they would have to divvy it up in inconsistent ways throughout the weeks, which I guess can work. But at the same time, since they might have different work schedules and whatever, that could become very inconsistent and lead to a lot of strife and distress.
Is polygamy just an advanced open relationship? Like, if everybody...
Yeah, we just kind of discussed that.
Well, in an open relationship, you don't necessarily actually enter into a relationship with multiple people. It can just be one person, and then you happen to sleep
Or
around
is
something.
everybody
Yeah,
in
that
a
too.
relationship with each other, or are they only
In
tied together by one person?
In polygamy, usually they're tied to one person, and they can choose to also be involved with the other people within it.
That would
They
make
can-
for some
they-
interesting
They could be
dynamic.
friends, they could be lovers, I guess. That would be interesting. But,
This could be a children's animated TV show.
of course, what?
I mean,
That's-
Steven
that seems-
Universe pulled it off.
God damn it, you're right. Fuck. But point I'm trying to make
Look,
is...
we just need to get a Cal Arts animator. Then we can, like, pitch it to Cartoon Network.
Point I'm trying to make
And
here...
talk.
The point I'm trying to make here is that the larger the quantity of spouses that a single person has, the more difficult it would be to maintain the relationships of every single one. Unless there's a very specific situation where between themselves they can maintain themselves because they also happen to be in a relationship of some kind that they can support them enough. You know, that kind of thing. Maybe not romantic, but, you know, just a relationship that can maintain it, you know? Like they're all bros or something, I don't know.
Okay, then that means that.
Hey,
you
reverse
cannot
polygamous
convince me
relationship.
otherwise. The Space Marine chapters of Warhammer 40Ks are just armed polygamous relationships. You probably didn't get that, but somebody in the audience did, and I don't regret this.
It just sounds funny when you say it, so...
Did somebody in the audience get it? How many people do we have watching?
None at the moment. Oh, 2 at the moment. I don't know who, but... That was random. That came out of
Wait.
nowhere.
Only one of us. Then there's an interloper.
Probably. My girlfriend was interloping before, so...
Right. Oh God.
So,
People are actually watching our shit now.
I mean... regardless.
I haven't
Um,
exactly come to terms with that reality yet.
Dude, you've been on my other streams before, and more people have watched
Just-
that, so...
Just like I still haven't come to terms with why my father has not returned after his cigarette trip.
Yes, the joke from over an hour ago. I love it.
Perhaps
Well,
he tried
what were we
to
saying?
test
What were we
the
saying?
Steven
We're ta-
Universe.
Right, Steven Universe is an example, and yada yada yada. Basically, it would be very difficult to maintain an extremely large polygamous relationship, so unless they have very specific conditions set in place, I would believe that there would be a general cap just out of necessity of how human relationships work. At around 6 or 7, I would say. Like, that would probably be where it would start to get very shaky, unless they have some sort of internal...
I would say 4 is a stretch.
Fair enough. Whatever the number is,
I
it
think-
probably exists.
I think the curve is very steep up in the early numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably somewhere around that situation. Like, it's like a huge upwards bend, and then, like, after who knows how many, it just sort of drops off because at that point there's so many it doesn't matter anymore.
About as steep as the mounting Hong Kong death toll.
Probably. Yeah, so because of that, I would say that child rearing would be at least decent, because, like, assuming the natural tendency for it to fall off in terms of relationship quantities, the worldliness that would be granted to these kids while still being able to maintain a relationship with their own mother and father feasibly could do good. Like, I'm not certain about this because I don't know. There's not enough cases of kids raised in polygamous households to be able to say for sure whether or not they would end up proper or not, because it's like, I don't know any.
The next plot of that science fiction game about an inhumane, unethical experience? Polygamy. Polygamy 2, starring Shell with the polygamy guns.
Oh, goodness. Lovely. Polygamy guns. Let's see. What other questions were there about polygamy? Like the child rearing and something else was there?
The economic.
We kind of discussed the economics a little bit, but we don't really know how much the pooled resources would affect.
Divorce and law and the complications.
We already talked about law. We don't know enough about that.
At the moment, our topic is on the morality, right?
Yeah, our topic is more to do with the social, psychological, philosophical concepts more.
Okay, but I still don't see how any of these factors can trump, ultimately, the consent of those involved.
That's the point we're trying to make here. We're trying to see if we
Yeah.
can. We're trying to see if we can falsify this, because we seem to all agree on this aspect.
Like, we can't just stop polygamous marriage based on the potential for neglectful child rearing, a hypothetical child at that. We can't stop it based on a hypothetical situation. We just can't pass moral judgments.
But also, marriages aren't dependent on whether or not they can make a child or have a child.
Exactly.
So
nobody can use that as a justification.
Otherwise, gay marriages wouldn't be viable, and neither would marriages between infertile people.
I swear I sound like a Catholic person.
So yeah, it wouldn't. Yeah, you're right. Like, because of that, it wouldn't. There isn't very much justification.
Nobody can make a moral call on this.
At least not in regards to child rearing, right? So, like, when it comes to other things, what about the
Or-
psychology of the individuals involved?
That's
mean,
their
sure.
choice at the end of the day.
Also true. I'm just trying to think if there would
Yeah.
be anything to try and
If
defend
they
it, to
wanna
try
break
and
their
instill
own-
something to help them along, you know? Assuming that there's some
Maybe-
issues involved. If there are any.
Maybe then we're morally obligated to support public marriage counseling classes.
Yeah,
Polygamy
something.
becomes prevalent.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, something along those lines, you know?
I don't even know how psychologists will have to deal with this, honestly.
That's
It'll
a
be an
good
interesting
point.
Dude, we need a psychologist in here. We gotta talk about this again.
Dude, I'm the closest thing to a psychologist we have.
You know what?
Not a very good one, considering
I don't know much about the
procrastination.
what?
What?
What? Excuse me?
You know,
What?
you know what might be
Excuse-
relevant. The rule that a certain percentage of any group are assholes. That might apply to large groups of.
I just
'Cause, like,
thought of a new
the more people-
occupation.
The more people are
You
involved,
get spies to infiltrate polygamous marriages to break them up. You just hire people to do that.
Oh no.
because
Polygamy hitmen.
why would you?
That's totally
But,
gonna be a thing, though. Like, I don't care who you are. That's probably gonna happen.
So you can end. No, like one of the brides sends someone else to infiltrate the marriage, so when the divorce happens, they get favorable terms.
Oh, no, that's doesn't sound great. All right, Pete, what were you gonna say?
The more people are involved in a polygamous marriage, the more likely it is that some of them will be terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In which case, that could ruin it forever.
I guess
Huh.
there needs to be a system in place for kicking people out of the polygamous marriage without. Then is it
yeah.
still marriage if the
Well-
bonds aren't that?
Well, that's the
lasting?
thing. That's the thing. It's more of a different system of divorce, I guess.
I can imagine like a divorce court and the jury is made up of all the brides.
just
it'll be like
the
a
entire
sitcom.
public, all the public that is sitting there,
God,
it's just
are
the
we
brides.
Okay, we gotta stop making jokes at the expense of polygamous people.
Yeah, well, we have to stop. But seriously,
Yeah,
it is the kind of thing where.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys.
But Pete makes a point. There is to consider the fact that the more people enter into polygamous relationships, the more chances that there's going to be at least one asshole in there. But at the same time, that same asshole is probably going to marry somebody else and make them suffer by themselves.
What do you mean?
You said that there's higher chances of there being an asshole, right? So, because of that, let's assume that polygamy isn't what they're going to go for. Or rather, polygamy isn't allowed, and instead they're only allowed one wife or something. Or one husband. It doesn't matter. The point is, one of them is an asshole. Whoever they do happen to marry might have to suffer alone from their assholery. But if it's a group, you might be able to coerce them into changing.
Actually,
I see.
the polygamous people probably have a less chance of getting an asshole in the group, simply because they have a support system in place. Well,
Or
a
the
better
support
system
or the
than
support
someone
system
alone.
or the support system changes the assholes more effectively.
Or prevents them from entering in the first place.
That too. I'm not sure. That's a good point. Pete, what do you think?
Okay, we need to get a polygamous.
There's not enough
unless
people.
Unless we go to Salt Lake City, that's an.
Yeah, or Mexico, where the other Mormon excommunicated people are. Because it's like not
Didn't they
common.
just get killed off? Didn't they just get killed off by the cartels though?
I don't know. The point is, we don't know any. That's the main issue.
Okay, the whole
Wait.
problem
Oh
with
wait,
this
shit! I
entire
do know
episode
someone.
is that-
I think I do know someone
Shit,
actually.
Really?
But like offhand, like some sort of like random acquaintance on the internet kind of thing.
I hope
But-
they aren't watching this episode.
I don't mind if they do.
Too
They're
many anti-polygamy jokes, I swear.
It wasn't anti-polygamy. We're just making fun of the possibilities that could happen.
Yeah, I guess so.
Anywho, but yeah, Pete, what do you think of the whole support system probability decrease of assholery thing?
Sense my thing out.
Say that again. You were cutting out a bunch. Still cutting out.
It says the voice.
Hello.
Is that better?
You keep cutting out. Like I can hear you, but you're cutting out.
Is this? I can see the voice connection bars, and it said red for a while, and then it said green, and now it says.
Okay, it's much better now. For the record, when you let go of push to talk, let go a little later. Because you cut off like right at the
Right.
end every time.
Okay. Now I've lost my train of thought, and I forgot what I was.
Polygamy, support systems, and assholery.
That's right. Okay, so I was. This makes sense. It's not going to be a perfect system, but
Of course.
the fact that the non-assholes will form a system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of like when a bunch of different marriages, like the monogamous marriages, like form friend groups. My parents have that in place, for example. Like my mom is friends with the wives of all the friends of my dad, so it's that kind of thing, you know, where they have their own little support system as well. So it's a little bit more separate and not as tight-knit overall compared to a polygamous system would be, but it's still there. It's kind of like that, but it might even be better.
Yeah, because this connection would be much more tight, so it would be the system would be more effective because everyone has to interact.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know what to think about that at this point. It's like This is a tough question, guys. But psychologically speaking, it does seem like it could be a bit more sound, or at least maintain the same level of soundness as a stable marriage would, you know?
Yeah, in theory.
In theory, yeah. Sociologically speaking, I'm not sure how it would affect the grand majority of people, but that's a lot harder question to answer. And the philosophical one, as Salvo has pointed out many times, there's absolutely no reason for us to be against their consent in this case, especially since the assholery aspect seems to be mitigated mildly because of the psychological aspect of the support group that they have.
Even if there was an assholery factor, that's not for us to judge.
Not in a moral sense, no.
No.
Maybe in a legal sense where we're trying to help them, but not in a moral sense, I don't think.
Well, not even in a legal sense, because, like...
And that's kind of what it's for.
It's not up to us.
Well, we do have a bunch of systems in place specifically for, like, marital abuse and things like that. It's more of a case of...
True.
It's more of a case of
Like,
helping
if they
in
reach
the
out for help, then we
exactly
can,
that
like,
kind of thing.
Help, but
I'm talking more in terms of that. That's the kind of thing we would implement, but not there isn't. I can't think of any good more. I'm trying to think of any moral reasoning to say no to the idea of polygamy, and it's really hard.
Can we get like a dude? We should get a Catholic on here and like.
Oh God! Stop!
Polygamy with us.
Stop!
Yes,
Stop with that,
Then
man.
We'll talk about the merits and dismerits of Steven Universe on this. and then you'll start ranting about Tumblr and the blue-haired feminists.
Oh God! You know,
Despite that being a false.
Do you want to know the sad part, Salvo?
maybe not entirely.
Salvo, the sad part is I don't think you're gonna get that from the Catholics. I think you're gonna get that from the atheists more. The angry atheists.
Can we just pick someone random from our atheism, get them on?
No! Fuck no! Please.
You ain't stopping me.
I'm stopping you. You can't get an invite without me.
Damn you.
I'm stopping you right here. I'm stopping that horse. Remember, we have a system where we try to make sure that they act in good faith.
For science, man.
That's terrifying, dude. Regardless.
Science. We're gonna see how deep they think.
Oh no, but not on a podcast.
It's not a matter of debating them. It's an experiment. It's a social experiment.
If that's the case, I'd rather not do it because that seems very weird.
I guess so.
That's a very weird thing to do when we don't even have the means of measuring it.
Let's devise a system.
Oh no. Okay,
Let's
do that on our own time, please. If we're going to do something like that, let's do it on our own time with an actual proper thing, and then we can make an actual study paper out of it and actually contribute to sociological science, perhaps.
Oh shit, there's my, that's something to put in my resume.
Do a thesis.
Classification of the angry atheist arguments.
I mean, you could do that if you wanted to. Who the hell is talking to me on WhatsApp? Ah, crap, they're asking me stuff.
The moral question was our last topic.
Yeah, pretty much. We're still kind of on that though, because, like I said, I'm trying to think of a reason to be against it. And honestly, I can't really think of anything.
Well, maybe I should just send an anonymous DM to a set of particular
Salvo,
people.
stop. Stop.
No, you don't need to know who they are. Let's just consider it a source.
No. Salvo, for the moment, let's just stop with that. Alright, let's just stop with that specific line of thinking for the moment. Right now, we're in the middle of a discussion. Let's keep it on topic for a moment.
Oh, maybe I could look at the religious arguments against it and see if there's anything of value there that we can debate.
Do we care about the religious?
I mean,
Like,
No,
It
like,
depends.
they might
That-
lead into a moral one.
if it's purely deistically based, then no, I don't think we care too much. But if it's anything but besides that, then maybe. They do seem to come up with random ways to justify these sorts of things that aren't purely religious, so possibly? The thing is, I can't think of any, because... I don't know. Oh, Salvo died for a second there. He's probably gonna be back soon. Pete, can you come up with anything? Because I'm drawing a complete blank.
not really. I'm trying to think, like, how could it hurt people? Who could it hurt? And if everyone is okay with it, then like, if they can leave if they're being hurt, then who's it hurt?
Yeah, it doesn't hurt anyone. That's the problem. If it's like actually a stable relationship between a bunch of people who are consenting and whatever, then what the fuck does it matter? Salvo, you trying to talk? I can't really hear you.
No, my parents have just yelled at me to get to sleep, so...
Ah, okay. Well,
Yeah.
we're ending on the conversation, I think, anyway, so I think it's a good time.
Right. It's sold out here. I'm going home.
Yeah, I think we're done, honestly. Because
I might need.
You might need what?
I might need to come up. I might need to come up with other arrangements than going to the park, because it's only going to get colder.
Yeah, you should also come up with topics that you could discuss more, too, because I want you to talk more.
Darren, I talked more today.
You did. You talked way more than usual, which is good. So you
It's
come up with a topic.
philosophical topic.
If not, we could go with several possible topics, which could be martial arts is one of the possible topic. There's
Definitely martial arts.
That's definitely one possible topic. Another one is age of consent. That's another possible topic to just consider. Things like that. The other ones we brought up,
Incest
like guns.
was one we had.
Agriculture.
Oh yeah, incest is one. I guess sexual deviance would be like deviance from the norm would be a more generalized, better topic to cover.
Ooh boy, that'll get us killed for sure.
Possibly, but I don't care.
We'll end up like Epstein.
Whatever. I mean, as long as we're not making fun of China while we do it, who cares?
We've already crossed that bridge, my man.
Exactly. So at this point, it doesn't matter. Let's just go for it. No, but this seemed like to be a fruitful conversation, I think. We can discuss the possible topics on the next one, but I just wanted to bring some of them up, like the age of consent, the martial arts thing, the gun law thing, the what was the other one that was brought up before? Ah, yes, the psychology of the role-playing game, like the tabletop role-playing game or general role-playing games in general. That thing that you brought up, Salvo, that's another one that we could possibly cover.
Yeah.
So at the very
Heinz
least,
and I have a lot of experience in
at
that.
the very least, we have a lot of topics that we could cover. So that's a good thing.
A huge backlog.
We have to write them down though because we keep forgetting.
Actually, could we do like a double special? Because I suspect there's not going to be enough to talk about for martial arts or the psychology of role-playing games.
Honestly, I think we can. We can. It depends. At least for martial arts, I can come up with sufficient topics.
Just type everything out in MasterCard. We'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll get to it later.
Alright.
Yeah. So.
Take a vote.
Yeah. Well, this is gonna be something else in the meantime. So yeah, I think that was good enough to talk. I think. We should end the stream. So.
Right.
I'm RPG.
Generic sign off.
Generic sign off. Salvo, your turn. Good enough.
Don't try to defraud the IRA.
Oh.
I learned that the hard way.
Okay. And with that, that's the end of the stream, guys. We'll see you in the next one where we decide on a topic and talk about it, whatever it may be. Bye.